And we are live. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another stream. Welcome to Wolf. Happy to jump into the charts today. Bitcoin with a massive downturn, like 1%. It's over. It was good while it lasted. See Obeth in here. Good morning. What a beautiful day. We are still doing this. Started a couple minutes late. My bad. But yeah, excited to jump into the charts today. See what people are thinking. Parse these things apart. See if we can't find some cool conclusions here. So it's me and Dom. We're back. We are back. How's it going, dude?
Doing good, man. Yeah, absolutely. Getting a little bit of pullback here. We got some tariff news pretty well timed when, the market, well, Bitcoin at least had a very nice run the last week, 2-3 weeks. Altcoins still looking for their little chance, but we had some perfectly timed news here. So excited to break down some thoughts here.
Definitely. Dom, I'm sharing the X link in the private chat. You see it. Yeah, Obi, bull market's over. It was great. But Lady Trader was wrong. If you tune into a lot of our spaces, we have a good amount of back and forth between people who believe that the cycle top is in, and they have not exactly been proven right in the last few weeks because prices has run up so much. They were thinking that we were about to just start to loop and go back down. And a lot of the bulls who it felt almost uncomfortable, but a lot of the traders were confident that we were going up, but it felt uncomfortable because we weren't like fully sure, and nothing in the market has shown us that we can predict things and be right. It just feels it's very reactionary. But what a recovery! I mean, a lot of people that we were speaking with in our spaces at the 75K mark were shot from the hilltops this time to get in, and they were right. It just felt like the worst time to get in because it was like, well, we could drop to 40 from here, but hey, everyone was caught off sides apparently, and Dom said it a lot in the last few weeks, but it was a very, very hated rally. Maybe we can start with that. It's been a few weeks since we've been on a stream, Dom, but
Absolutely.
you've used the term it's been a hated rally multiple times, which I like, and I feel like that's a good teaching point for people who are like, what is that? Why would it be a hated rally?
Yeah, awesome point there. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. What was interesting in the data, basically since right here is when I first started seeing something abnormal. So we're talking 30 days ago. Essentially, what it showed is that funding rates, which are an awesome mechanism to show like if a lot of people are longing or shorting, and that kind of gives us a gauge of, is the market actually bullish or are people expecting higher prices or the average traders? And funding rates were very low. And more importantly, the spot premium, which is something that I talked a lot about the last, 3 weeks on spaces. I'm sure you remember me referencing it, how it was very odd for us to see Bitcoin move up the way that it did. So, we could see Bitcoin moved up 50%. And even when it was up 30%, this spot premium was actually going higher, which is a very unusual thing to happen. And what that shows is that the price of the spot market was actually higher than the price of the perp market. So if we look back in history, it really gives us a good idea of what that means. So we could see here after the ETF pump, see how when prices really started going high, we actually had a spot discount. So if I inverse this is going to translate to a perp premium, which means a lot of people are longing on the perp market, meaning people are excited, emotions are high. A lot of people, expect higher prices. And that kind of gives us a gauge like, okay, at some point here in the future, the market is going to chill out because it's becoming overheated. And sure, this doesn't mean right when it flashes, the top is in. But what it means is, hey, start paying attention because we're going to get a long consolidation after. And sure enough, 8 months later, 8 months after, all we did was go sideways. So, I'll rewind a month ago when we saw this spot premium getting more positive as prices went higher. That was a very unusual dynamic. And that's why I kept saying, the term that you love, this is a hated rally, because what it told me is that people were off sides. People did not expect Bitcoin to bounce up this high. I think that this was the move that really caught them off sides. And this whole time, what was happening is people kept shorting. People did not want to give in. They kept just saying, I'll wait for a pullback. It'll pull back. I'll get in on a pullback. That pullback really never came. We never even took out any of these lows. Each time we could see these consolidations, none of these lows were ever untapped. And throughout this whole period, we also had Sailor bidding a lot. So
Yeah.
I think that he obviously played a big part in this, but more so, this was smart money. And I know that term is thrown around a lot. And some people, think it's a funny term, but it's true. Smart money was accumulating through this whole run up. And I think that's what kept me steady in my thesis that we were going higher, because all I did was look back this whole cycle and said, hey, anytime that we saw, a loss of the spot premium, it told us that a cool off was eventually coming. It did not fail any time this cycle. We could see it happen right there. See how we lost the spot premium. More importantly, after the election pump right through here, of course, as prices did go higher, but look, for the next 3 months after, all we did was go sideways sideways and down for 110 days after that. So that's really the simplest way I can explain why this rally was hated. And, I hope that makes sense to people, but there's a really cool thing in the crypto market that we don't have in other markets. And we have a perp market and we have a spot market. And those markets are not together. The funding rate does their best job to keep those markets intact with each other. But at the end of the day, they're not connected. They are technically disconnected. And, that's why I actually published this indicator for people to use, because, we throw it on Ethereum. We saw the exact same thing. We could use this on other things. Of course, for Bitcoin, it's the best thing to use it on. But overall, this right here was the simple thing. And even as we speak right now, we still have not even seen the spot premium vanish. We could see, look when the spot premium vanished after the election pump. It left right after the election pump, which showed, hey, a lot of people are logging on perps. The spot market is not stronger than the perp market. People are leverage betting on higher prices. Right now, this run up has not been a leveraged bet on higher prices. This has been an accumulation of actual coins by what I like to call smart money. And that smart money caught dumb money and even some very smart traders and analysis off guards the last, 2 months. So to me, that's still the most important and unique dynamic about this entire rally. And if we put this to like OKX had a very interesting dynamic where I looked back over the last, 3 years, or not even 5 years, and look at the spot premium that showed up. This spot premium showed up at right after we hit 93. And we could see, just go back in history, we never saw anything near that type of spot premium. And I kept posting this. I probably made 15, 20 posts about this the last 3 months, saying something is not right here, like in a good way. Like, this is not usually what we see. This is a very, very impressive thing. So yeah, that's my simple spiel about how I at least continued to stay bullish throughout this rally. It was really based on this single metric that told me that this market and this rally was very healthy. And this rally had legs behind it because it was being supported by the spot market. So hope that makes sense for everybody listening. And also to you, Kate. Hopefully that's a good explanation of, how we can look at the market and say, is it overheated? Is it driven by emotions? Or are there actual people actually interested in driving this price up?
Yeah, I remember we talk about this. By the way, for people who are watching the stream, shout out to all of you. But we do these spaces which are on X, they're audio, and we have the panels. Traders come on, and Dom is he hosts most of them. He basically had remained bullish this whole time. It's so hard when you don't have the benefit of seeing how it played out yet. Like, basically 90% of content you see on YouTube or X of analysis is review analysis or observational analysis of things after they played out. And so it's just like easy to be like, oh yeah, we went this way and that way and this thing happened. But in real time, where you don't have the data in front of you and you just have what you've got today and what's happened in the past, it's a pretty interesting dynamic. And I remember like that first run, like you had mentioned, Dom, to like the 95K, where everyone was kind of like, oh, I guess we're kind of back here. Like we're right back here in these prices. That was interesting. Because for me at 75K, I got cold feet. I got nervous to buy in, even though it felt like I probably should. I think I actually maybe did buy a little, but I loaded up at 80, 82 or 85 or something like that. And then, we ran to 95, and I was not expecting that. And then we ran again, and I was like, okay, here we go. And then, like you mentioned, like everyone felt like offsides is probably the best way to put it. I really like that term because it really felt that way. This part
Absolutely.
of it. A lot of people over, because I don't know who said it, but someone said you can outsmart your way into a good trade. Like you can overanalyze and not enter the trade, or enter the trade that you maybe shouldn't in a market like this, where it feels designed to shake people out this time, doesn't it?
100%. Yeah, no, that's an absolute great way to look at it. And offsides is really the best term. And the best way we could think about that is, people in this market, they said, oh, this is just a bear market rally. This is going to correct. I'll get my chance to buy back in the 80s, and that's kind of why we continue to see the spot premium, in my honest opinion, is because people weren't saying, hey, this thing's going higher. People were saying, hey, I'm going to wait for a pullback. And more importantly, people were shorting heavy. Like this move up right here took out so many shorts, hundreds and hundreds of millions. I mean, a ridiculous amount of shorts got taken out there. And that's also why we kept the spot premium the whole time, because people were shorting on perps. So what that was doing was keeping the perp price lower than the spot price. And you can't short on spot. So, when we had all of this buy pressure in the spot market, it kept this entire spot premium where it's at right now. And, the best way I could also add for anyone, obviously in hindsight, we could always educate well, but during the time and on my streams, I also reference this, and this is what I love, is auction market theory is an awesome thing. And I think that, I mentioned this a few times on spaces before and whatnot, but anyone listening, feel free to look into that. It's a very good way to understand how markets move. And what added to my conviction that we were going higher, and 2 weeks ago I said an all-time high seems like it's only a matter of time, it's because we could see that we established this value area here over the last 3 months, basically since November to February, and pretty clear value area. We can see the bottom of the value area is value area low, value area high, and right when we broke this, we obviously rebounded, or we went down to our previous value area high, and then we established a new value area. And right when this move happened right here, what this was doing, this was actually reclaiming. We could see if this line extended over, this was actually reclaiming back into the value area that we established months before. And auction market theory states that, when you regain a previous value area, especially one that you held for 3 months after you lost it for many months, it's almost a guarantee that you're going to rotate back to the top of that value area. And that's really the best way you could also look at, any type of short-term time frame. This is a volume profile, if anyone's curious. This is really a good gauge and an awesome setup for any type of trader. Is if you establish a value area, also known as a range, then you break out of that, establish another range, and then you regain into that range, it is almost a guarantee you're going to rotate back to the top of that range. So that was also one other piece of analysis that told me, hey, considering that we regained this and we held it, and then to put the cherry on top, the election VWAP, which I probably talked about for, I don't know, I probably said this word probably 200 times in the last 5 months because of how important and how interesting it was. That also perfectly coincided with that value area low. So when you regain that and you regain the value area, that's really just an awesome piece of education that tells you hey, chances are you're going to go back to that top of that value area. So that's really like my, in retrospect type of, breakdown, even though throughout the whole time myself was sharing these ideas and these thoughts. And, before we move on, I guess I will share that, if we look back of where our low was put in, it was a very obvious low in my opinion. And if we look why, I posted this a lot, it was essentially, we had a lot of areas that we consider our bull market bands. So if we put the yearly rolling VWAP on here, we could see all of these levels here. So the first thing was the yearly rolling VWAP, bull market band was the green. You can see that was our low in August. And then if we go back to last cycle, we lost it for a bit, but regained it right when we fully accepted below, end of the bull market. And then very similar concept here, right? When we accepted below in 2018, end of the bull market. So I went back in history and said, hey, Bitcoin's low has to be about right here. And then if we add the 50-week moving average in, which I know a lot of us talked about, if I put that back on there, perfectly was in that area. And we also had the halving VWAP. So see this orange line right here? Anytime in history, Actually, last stream, Kate, I think we actually spent like 20 minutes talking about this VWAP, how if you put it on the halving, usually you don't go below that. In a bull market, you should not go below that. You should not accept below that. We had that. And then also we had the previous structure high. So a simple support or resistance zone. We can see that all of these levels apexed right where we bounced. So technically speaking, it was a very technical level for us to see that type of bounce. But we all remember what was happening here. Everybody thought it was over.
Yep.
Stocks were crashing. The recession was inbound. And sure enough, Bitcoin totally just V-shaped out of here. And also, too, left everyone sidelined. And the reason why is because down here, we had max fear. Everybody thought it was over. Everybody thought Trump was ruining the economy. Everybody thought that, Trump ruined the markets. And that's why when we got that initial bounce, people faded it because people were like, nothing changed. We still have these tariffs, the damage is still done. And sure enough, that's kind of what led to this whole rally is people being off sides. And that's the cool thing about this market is, it does the best job of really sidelining and putting anybody who's off sides continue to stay off sides. Like it does a great job of doing that. And that's really is what I love about this market. It just, it does an awesome job of saying, hey, you're off sides. Okay, you're going to continue to be off sides and we're going to mess with your emotions and you're not going to get your pullback. And, here we are now. So that's really my overview of looking about how we got here. A good intro just to say of, a breakdown of this move because it was a very unique move in my opinion.
Yeah, dude. I will say, yeah, like I said a second ago, the 75K area, it was looking bleak, dude. I mean, it was looking bleak. I mean, I was like waiting for the next drop. The only reason I got in was specifically because it was Bitcoin. It's the only asset that's finite, has a finite supply, and just has the chance that it could just fly for no reason. And I was just like, well, I better own some. Like it's not good to just be fully out and fully in cash when you have an asset like Bitcoin. Not even in a trading perspective, but at 85, I was like, okay, the chances are we go back to 105 from here, or we crash to 40. And I was like, well, it doesn't almost matter. I need to just have some of this Bitcoin. And so it's pretty crazy too, Dom. Like the Bitcoin dominance, having that's something you're following a lot as well. But Bitcoin dominance continuing to grow, and then very recently had a bit of a pullback. But where's it at right now?
Totally. Yeah, no, it's a very good point. I mean, Bitcoin dominance has been, let me see if I can get all these drawings off here. Bitcoin dominance has been the one thing that I think most of us got wrong this cycle. I wasn't in the camp of really strongly calling tops like some people really were convinced of. And that's fine because a lot of people had reasons to do so. But this is the one thing that I think caught most of the people in this market completely off sides is the way that Bitcoin dominance has moved up this cycle and people expecting us to see what we saw last cycle, or more importantly, what we saw in 2017. We haven't seen an ounce of what we saw of those pullbacks. And my best opinion is, even if we rewind back to when we first started these streams and spaces, Cade, is this has been an institutional bid that has moved Bitcoin up. This has not been a big monetary expansion. This has not been people getting injected cash like they did last cycle. This has not been crazy money printing. This has not been low rates. It's not been crazy borrowing. It's been a passive bid driven by ETFs and Sailor and, other institutions that maybe we don't even know about. So that really is my breakdown of, the simplest way of why Bitcoin dominance has acted this way, because Bitcoin has had a very strong passive bid. And more importantly, that 45 billion that's in ETFs, it can't go to Sol tomorrow. It can't go flow into Doge. It can't go flow into Link, Sui, and that really is the difference of why I think Bitcoin dominance just continued to rally up. And even more so, well, what I always say, at least recently, is most of these altcoins, I think people have realized are vaporware, and I hate to be like that. I hate to approach the market in that manner, but I'm going to look at it at face value. And if we look at most of these coins are just kind of like shell companies. They have these crazy valuations and people buy them up, but why? They haven't added any solution to the marketplace. Maybe they will. maybe they have promise of doing so, but they haven't. And I think that this cycle, people have realized that, at least more than the last cycles. And that's why we have not seen much from alts at all. And, I think the biggest question still, and quite frankly, I don't have the answer, is are we going to see a big downturn like we have? If I had to take a guess, I don't think so. I think the max that we see is, if we go based on cycles and what Lady Trader believes, she's got her amazing cycle theory, which I think is an awesome idea. And, the data still suggests that Bitcoin in this market does have until about October, November to go higher historically. Historically speaking, we topped at about the 1,066th day since the bottom. So I did a bunch of analysis on this. So right now we're at 916. So 1,060 is October 12th. And if we look back, we look back here, this right here was, look, 1,060 to a dot. And then if I go over to a longer time frame here, so we can see the full history, pretty sure that this 2017 cycle was also 1,060 days. If we go from this first bottom right here, let's see. Yep, 1,070 days. So we can see that time frame has been like near perfect. So, wow. If we go back to that question, we have another, we're at 916. So we have another about 120, 140 days. We go to Bitcoin dominance here. We have until, say, October. Just historically speaking, who knows? We might not follow that, but we still have this window where we can expect higher prices. Are we going to see something like this? Because that's what everybody's hoping for. And that's why when we hit all-time high the last week, the timeline was pretty silent, because most people are really deep into altcoins, because when the market moves and the whole market's expanding, you're going to make more money on alts. We all know that. But when the market's going down, you're going to lose a lot more. So, my best opinion on Bitcoin dominance is I'm not going to call a top until we get a structure break. So, a structure break to me is definitely losing that quarterly VWAP, which we bounced off perfectly the last 2 weeks. And then more importantly, if we lost the early rolling VWAP, that would be something that was like, okay, maybe now we can look for a large expansion in the altcoin market. And then just trends. We could draw this trend from the bottom that also coincides right here. So, we have some ways to go before we can really say like, hey, Bitcoin dominance is going to take a breath. And I think that anyone that knows exactly when that's going to happen, I don't know, they're we don't have enough evidence. It really is just guessing. So to me, I take a reactive approach to this, saying, okay, if we start seeing structure break on this, that's when you hop into alts. I don't know if being proactive about it is the best approach, saying like, hey, Bitcoin dominance is going to drop next week. And then you buy a bunch of alts, and then all it does is just chuck its way right back up, So that's my best view on Bitcoin dominance. And if anyone, is curious or confused why it's acted this way, it's very simple, because this market has not been fueled by money printing like it has in the past. This market has not been fueled by, a very booming economy. This market has been fueled by institutional interest in Bitcoin alone. We saw with Ethereum has an ETF, and look at its performance. It's got subpar inflows. It got an ounce of what Bitcoin did. So, unfortunately, we can't see the money that's moved Bitcoin up. We can't see that money flow into alts easily, unless over the next 3 months, we get a XRP, Sol, Doge, and whatever else ETF is pending. If those get approved, then sure, we could see it flow in, but I still have a strong belief that the money that's been parked in Bitcoin ETFs, it's parked there. A lot of that money is not going to be leaving anytime soon. So, was there any questions?
No, I think you explained that pretty well. I think that was well said. There's actually a couple comments in here. There's one from Octavia, which we sort of answered here. How do you see this cycle playing out the last tail with some of these ETFs pending? ETFs pending for Q4. That's interesting. I guess you kind of hit on that with the ETFs.
I think that it really just comes down to the point, like, okay, is the SEC going to approve these? We have a crypto friendly SEC now, but I've been seeing nonstop that they keep delaying these ETFs. So I'm not up to date with those deadlines, but Sure. If we see those, you know, the XRP, Sol, I think Doge, I don't know what other ETFs are pending. I know there's a few other altcoins, but if those get approved, sure, we absolutely could see money flow into those. But at the same time, it's like, who can really guess the interest in those coins? You know, if I had to take a guess, even though not just because I like XRP, XRP probably would see the highest inflow because that really is like the coin that everybody, you know, is really into, that or like isn't big into crypto, but everyone seems to love XRP. So if I had to take a guess, our best chance is that XRP gets a large inflow, you know, but as for it being anywhere near the magnitude of Bitcoin, I think it's a very slim chance. I mean, I think last time I checked, Bitcoin, pretty sure Bitcoin only, or not only, Bitcoin took in, let's take a look here. Bitcoin has taken in since the start, Bitcoin has taken in $45 billion of net ETF inflows. Then if we change that over to Ethereum has taken in 2 billion. So Bitcoin has taken in 20 times more of ETF inflows than Ethereum. So, you know, even if XRP or Sol gets 1 or 2, 3 billion, we could absolutely see, you know, some higher prices with that. I think timing will be key though, because I'm not going to hold myself perfectly steady to that 1,060 day mark. But technically speaking, you know, we have until October until we're at the point where we're like, hey, you know, based on past cycles, this cycle is now the longest ever, you know, and I think people at that point would start getting not a little bit concerned, but a little bit like, hey, you know, let's watch out here. The cycle length has reached its end. Now we're entering either a new era or we're about to see the same playbook repeat. You know, and I think that's really what I'm most excited for this year, is to say if Bitcoin tops before October, if it keeps running until October, or, you know, if Bitcoin makes a high in November or December, it's like, hey, cool guys, like we're on a whole new game now. Like, it's every man for themselves. You know, the rear view mirror is not going to help us anymore.
Man, that would be crazy because everyone would basically have to reset a lot of things, especially Lady Trey. I don't know, bro. We'd have to have a there. She's having parties right now. We're throwing her parties for her 4-year cycle theory. But if that dislodges, it's gonna be a brutal time. I'm not sure. I mean, that's been literally her strategy for like 8 years. To have to switch over from that'd be tough.
Absolutely, it would be.
All right, I see a question here from Zcat asking, said they saw your flag. They'd like you to check XRP.
Yeah, I do have a little bit of flag there. Yeah, if you want, Kate, maybe I'll do a little shorter term analysis just of the overall market here.
Yeah, let's do it. And by the way, for anyone who's watching, please do like and subscribe. If you're watching from Dom's account and you're not subscribed to his account, scroll down a little bit and see. If you're not, hit that subscribe button for him and like the video stream. That way it helps push out the algorithm. If you're watching on Wolf, please do the same. If you're on X, please retweet the stream. We always appreciate it. If you have any questions, drop them down there in the chat and we can have a look at them. So we'll also go through some of these top stories that have happened in the last week or so.
Yeah.
Towards the end. But yeah, please, let's do this.
Cool. So yeah, just a little short term, you know, view of what's happening here. I think that this little pullback here, perfectly timed with some news from Trump. You know, awesome timing, you know, what we saw right here. But overall, I mean, if we look at the chart, you know, any type of cool down here, not unexpected, nothing alarming. You know, we could totally see more cooling down happen here. I think would be very, very healthy. And really, I think in the short term for all of us, you know, traders, what we're looking at here is to see if this previous value area high, so this dotted line right here, this including, you know, our candle closes, if this area holds, because technically speaking, you know, just if we even zoom out even more, look what happens when we have a big resistance, you know, we break out here, and then what do? We retest it, and then we go higher. So, you know, if we apply that logic to what just happened right here, what did we just do? We just broke out of our previous high right here. Us seeing a retest, I think, is completely normal, you know, completely normal. Anything down to, in my opinion, anything down to like 106 would still be healthy. I think down to 106 would still be healthy and keep that trend intact. And then, of course, you know, if we accept below this, Still nothing I think that's too concerning, but what it will do is just push us out a few more weeks before we start seeing a larger expansion as a possibility. So, if we lose that area, I think that this local trend would break. And, trend lines are the simplest tool in technical analysis, but they're very, very powerful. Like, look what happened when we broke our downtrend here of 3 months, broke it, consolidated above, and, our whole trend so far has happened right after that. So apply the same logic to this trend right here. We have until probably about 105, 106. So I think right now, completely normal, perfectly timed news for Trump to say some tariff stuff. Little bit of late longing happened here. Spot premium did stay pretty steady, but I don't have the funding rates on here, but funding did spike up here. So what that said is people were starting to get a little happy on the leverage side. So, hey, the market's like, hey, people getting excited on the leverage side, thinking that this is an up only market.
Let's cook them.
What do? They take them out. That's how a market works. So
Yeah.
in my opinion, what I'll be watching here personally for the next 5 days, week, is to see, any type of pullback down to about 106, 105, completely healthy in my opinion. Completely healthy. Anything in this gray box, I think, would be a very healthy thing. And if we just go back in history, when we do break all-time highs, or previous highs, it's not unexpected to see some type of pullbacks like this. If we see right here, even though we didn't breach it exactly, we kind of hit it. So, but similar concept, basically almost hit an all-time high. Look, strong pullback after. Everybody thought it was over, but then bam, that's when the larger move happened. And then same thing back, and if we go back into 2021 or 2020 when we broke our all-time high, I think we butted right up to 20K. If anyone remembers back here, see if I could put that line up here. This 1920K we had just about right there. And sure enough, right when we hit that, what happened was, here, 1 second. Right when we hit that, bam, perfectly hit a tiny little all-time high. Kind of like what just happened. And look, we get a pullback. People think it's over. So technically speaking, this is pretty normal, pretty normal for us to breach all-time high, mess around a little bit, fake a little bit of people out. So, I don't think it's way too early to get concerned that this was a deviation, a trap. Always a possibility, but nowhere near enough evidence for us to say that. And then if I go here on, a longer term time frame here, I think a very similar thing happened. Yep. Look, exact thing happened in 2017. So look, we break our all-time high, previous all-time high, break it. Everybody thinks everybody thinks rally's going crazy. This is equivalent to our 111K we were at yesterday. Massive pullback. Everybody think it's over. Back then that was a 30% pullback. So now we're not going to see something like that, I don't think. But sure enough, we get that pullback, bam, prices move higher. So that's just my little piece of, evidence to show that what we're seeing here, breaching an all-time high, coming back for pullbacks, not anything abnormal, nothing, nowhere near for any type of cause for concern. I think that it's just normal Bitcoin doing what it should be doing in a normal market. So that's really my simplest view on what I'm watching here for the next 2 days, 3 days, week. Who knows how long this will take here, but I think that any type of pullback here, very, very healthy into this gray box, can lead to higher expansion. And then, as for the alts as a whole, I think the alts as a whole, I actually made a post. Let me see if I can take a quick look at this post. I might still have it drawn up here. So what I broke down is that, when Bitcoin goes into price discovery, when Bitcoin breaks its all-time high, altcoins don't do much right away. Altcoins, they don't get the liquidity right away. It's usually just concentrated in Bitcoin, and that's kind of what happens. And then, pretty soon after, then we see a rotation to alts. So here, instead of pulling it up, I just pulled up the chart. So if we see here, might be a little bit blurry, but you guys can get the idea. I posted this yesterday. This was back in March, or not March. This was back in November when we broke our all-time high. We see Bitcoin breaks previous high. There's about a 9-day delay where Bitcoin was sucking liquidity. And then 9 days later, altcoins actually started taking off when Bitcoin was 23% above its all-time high. So what this tells us, and same thing happened in 2020. So if I go back to 2020 when we broke 20K, basically same exact thing happened. Bitcoin went crazy. Everybody was sitting there. I remember specifically, everyone's like, what are alts doing? What are alts doing? I remember Ethereum was still at like, I think Ethereum was still at like $700. I remember this was like January 1st, 2021. Ethereum was still at like, was still at like $700. Bitcoin was already at like almost 35K, and everyone's like, what are alts doing? And then all of a sudden somebody like flipped this switch and all coins went nuts. So that's really, I think, why altcoins, not I think historically, that's why altcoins have not done too much yet. At least historically speaking, this is completely normal. Granted, Bitcoin continues to obviously see an expansion. This is completely normal. So that's kind of how I'm viewing this right now. I think Bitcoin needs to, figure itself out here. But once we see a real expansion on Bitcoin, so that's probably moving to like 120s, potentially 125s, 130s. This is the point where it's like, okay, if altcoins still aren't moving here, you wait for Bitcoin to do this, and within that period, altcoins will go crazy. So that's really my approach on, what I'm thinking about altcoins, because I know everybody's interested in them. Everybody's waiting for them.
Oh, yes.
As for like Ethereum, XRP specifically, I can go nitty and gritty in between these, but I still think we just need to look at the bigger picture and say, these aren't going to do much until Bitcoin allows it. So, I hope that makes sense. That's really my approach. And my approach isn't just an opinion. It's just based on what we've seen in the past, because we've seen these awesome dynamics. So hopefully that makes sense.
Does make sense. I saw someone here saying, flip the alt switch, Dom. I see someone saying, draw some lines. Octavia says, Dom, how many likes for a face reveal? Hilarious.
Perfect. Yeah. 5,000 likes on this.
5,000.
Yeah, on this YouTube video.
Okay, that's less than I thought you would say. 5,000. Make it happen. Somebody make it happen. I see OTG in the house. Appreciate you, OTG. Thanks for tuning in.
OTG?
How's it going? OTG, 5,000 likes, he said, for a face reveal from Dom. So it's got to happen.
But yeah, before we move on from the altcoin talk, actually, I've been posting this chart the last 3-4 days. Actually, I posted this probably 3 days ago, right about here, and I said we should see a little expansion. We saw a little expansion, higher time frame. What I've said, my tune has been since we first hit this. So this was May 12th. So we're talking, about 10 days, maybe 2 weeks. I said we're not going to see that expansion in alts until we regain this previous support and we get out of all of these VWAPs. So once again, VWAPs for the win. Anybody that follows me, VWAPs, my favorite tool, technical analysis, awesome piece of analysis. And look at where we got trapped within the VWAP bands. I've had these drawn for weeks and weeks, and they really they really respect themselves well. So that's also what I'll be watching very closely. Of course, we need to be watching Bitcoin, see how it acts, but this is what I'm going to be watching very closely to see, okay, alts are ready to wake up. Once we get, instead of this being resistance, once we see this be support, that's when we are going to get an expansion in the altcoin market. Until then, got to stay patient, got to hope that Bitcoin just continues to chop itself around and allow alts to really wake up. But I think historically speaking, it's a very, very, very high probability that considering Bitcoin printed a new high, altcoins will see some expansion. But also too, people are all excited about, needs to happen now, needs to happen this week. Yeah. I'm fine with this market. I'd actually love for this. I'd love for Bitcoin to come back down to 105K, spend 2-3 weeks just doing nothing. And then for us to restart this trend back in June, in July and August. I'd love to see a summer rally. So me personally, I'm not convinced, or I'm not stuck in any time frame. Like, we still have months for this to happen. Personally, I think even if we chill out now for a few weeks, that'd be great. That would be very, very healthy. So, it's not like I'm saying this needs to happen right now. I think we have as long as Bitcoin stays steady up in the high hundreds, 105, even above 100, think we're in a great shape to be excited for the next few months. So that's really my short term of what I'll be watching here on altcoins. And, like I said, I can go nitty and gritty into each of these altcoins, but I don't think it's really relevant. What's relevant is seeing the indexes and seeing Bitcoin dominance and, seeing altcoin dominance, others dominance. I mean, look at others dominance. It's done absolutely nothing. If we look at the altcoin pairing, it's done absolutely nothing. I mean, really can't even catch a breath. I mean, I love pulling up this chart. Look at the 2021 alt season. Look at that pump. We haven't seen an ounce of that this cycle. We have not seen an absolute ounce of that. And that's why also, too, I don't believe that we're going to see something this size. But even if we do a little bars pattern right here, even if we get something this size, I think we'll all be very happy campers. We will be very, very, even if we get something even half of that size, just another push up to where we were back in November. That would be a large move on the altcoin market. So
it would be. Do you think people should like people were buying up the whole bear market for the altcoins? That's why there's such a big push, because for anyone who had money, they were buying because they were like, seeing this before. It's time to buy as the bear market. Everyone says that. But since then, it hasn't exactly been the craziest performance. And so a lot of people are they might be break even, but I feel like a lot of people might still be underwater, especially if they were loading up the whole way up on the alts. And then we never really got that full pump.
Yeah, I mean,
what do you think they could go to? Like for the altcoins, like what could ETH even get to? Do you think in this cycle?
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question here.
Yeah.
Ethereum obviously is it's an odd one because we look at something like XRP, we look at something like Sol. They really had nice moves this cycle. Ethereum, I mean, Ethereum's at the point it was back in April of 2021. It has done absolutely nothing. So, it's so hard for me to say here on Ethereum. I mean, to be completely honest, what I think it depends on is how high Bitcoin gets. Because if Bitcoin just tops out at 120, 130, 140, I don't think we're going to see Ethereum all-time high. I think we just see Ethereum back to maybe 4,000. Same thing with Sol. Maybe we could see Sol reach 250, maybe 350, something like that. XRP maybe $4 or $5. I don't think it would be that big of an expansion, but I think it's going to hinge on whether Bitcoin does the 140, 150 to 200. If we get that, then yes, I have a very, very high probability that Ethereum will hit an all-time high, Sol will print an all-time high, and we will see about 25% of the alt season we saw in 2021. I think that's really what it's going to depend on. And then the last thing really is going to be these ETFs. If these altcoin ETFs launch and nobody cares, that puts even more fuel on my fire that says altcoins are useless. At least 99% of them, nobody wants them. And I'll be looking around waiting to see where, the bid will come from, But overall, I mean, from the start, this was posted back in September 2023. My idea this whole time was 155. I wasn't holding myself perfect to that, but we see how we've moved. I posted this at about 25K. I mean, that really still lines up. My concept is 140 to 160. If we see 140 to 160, at that point, I think that'll really be the point where we're okay, Bitcoin probably can start its chilling out phase for 6 months, for a year. Because I know a lot of people, I mean, you talk to the most Bitcoiners. I don't talk to many, but I'm sure a lot of them expect 200, 300, 400 this cycle. I would agree, right?
It's half down the middle, half are in the 300K camp, and then half are just 150 to 200, actually less than I thought.
Yeah.
But they're of most of them that I've heard are of the belief that the cycles are done, that it will begin to sort of flatten a little bit, and maybe we see the corrections a little bit. But for the most part, we're in, I think Saylor coined the term, it's the Bitcoin gold rush, but there's another term he used. He basically was saying that from 2025 to 2035 is going to be like Bitcoin expansion mode, where people start buying this thing up, it starts to get squeezed, and the price starts to get just absolutely radical to the point where people are just stop trading it. It'll just be a thing that people can't wait to get their hands on. All the companies that are buying Bitcoin on their balance sheet are buying it off the markets. They want it. They want you to buy their stock so that they can buy Bitcoin. And it's this whole thing. But it's pretty interesting. I mean, I don't know. I'm scared to trade Bitcoin because of the fact that there's a finite supply and so many big institutions want it.
Sure.
That for me to not buy the Bitcoin itself feels rather risky.
Yeah.
When I could trade the altcoin, I mean, especially because the altcoins typically will, if you're scalping, will just kind of move along with Bitcoin.
Totally.
It feels tough. It's going to be tough for me to sell the Bitcoin at any position now, just because of those facts. But the altcoins, dude, those are fair game, like you said. Those are not. I do not care.
No.
Those are just
Yeah. And then I think that's a good breakdown there of targets and overall thoughts about it. So to answer your original question there, whether Ethereum or these altcoins really see just a little pump or a big pump, it's going to depend on if Bitcoin just gets to 120 and it's over. And I shouldn't say over, it stops there. We go through another one of these or another one of these. I think that's what it's going to depend on. But if Bitcoin gets to 140 to 150, which really has been my target for years, then yes, I think Ethereum will break its all-time high. I think XRP will probably do above $5. I think Sol can do $400 or $500. I think we would see a pretty large expansion in this market. Very, very large expansion. I think just at that point, people would get really excited. We'd draw on retail again, and that would probably be the hurrah where I'm like, okay, exit all your altcoin bags. Unless these things are doing stuff, don't touch them again. That's really the point I'll be at. And I guess one thing here before I move on is Ethereum. Very, very simple view here on Ethereum. Anyone who's curious on Ethereum, this right here is a very interesting line. This is our bull market trend. So we see from the bottom here back in May of 2022, perfect trend line. And then also to all of these VWAPs, I don't have them all drawn, but you could continue to draw more of them. I think from this low right here, this low, you could draw a few more. They all coincide right here. Really, that's what I'm watching for on Ethereum. If Ethereum can regain this level, I think at this point, this will also be another trigger that altcoins are ready to go. So you see, I use a lot of different pieces of evidence to tell me altcoins are ready. One being total 3, one being Bitcoin dominance, one being seeing how Bitcoin responds above in price discovery. And then the biggest one probably is seeing Ethereum, because if Ethereum moves higher, altcoins move higher. Because if we go and look at when Ethereum had that crazy pump right here, let's throw Bitcoin dominance on top of it. We throw Bitcoin dominance on top of it. We can see all of a sudden, the whole altcoin market expanded throughout that period. See Bitcoin dominance perfectly inversed when Ethereum was pumping. So that's really what I'm watching here on Ethereum. Anyone else that's watching this stream right now, set alerts up here. We're talking 2.7 to about 2.8. Ethereum gets above that, I think it's probably easy sailing up to mid threes, and then probably at that point 4K is probably only time. So that's going to be what we're waiting for on alts. And I know 95% of us very interested in altcoins. That's the majority of the bag. Most people on Twitter, they're in altcoins. If you're on Twitter all day, every day, most of those people are in altcoins, just because, that's what's netted and that's what's given us yielded the most amount of returns over the past, 3 cycles. So, that's my quick breakdown on probably the biggest, the golden question right now is, when will altcoins move? Now you can see what I'll be watching. I'll be watching Ethereum. I'll be watching Total 3. I'll be watching Bitcoin dominance, and I'll be watching how Bitcoin responds up here. And then just before we move on from alts, we could see, pull up the spaghetti. You love the spaghetti, Jade.
Yes.
Pull up the spaghetti here. We can see, let's see, go over the 5-day. For the most part, most altcoins have not done too much. We see, we go to the 1 month here. See, like most altcoins have not done too much besides memes. I mean, memes really, memes did hundreds of %, but most of these, look, every sector's only up like max 40%, which Bitcoin moved up 20% in that period. So, this is really my best gauge to say, like, okay, these things start rolling and we start seeing Bitcoin at the bottom. We can see the white here. On each of these, Bitcoin is always going to be white. So we see how Bitcoin's in the middle. That is not alt season. When alt season happens and alts are really starting to wake up, Bitcoin will be at the bottom. When Bitcoin's at the bottom of each of these, that tells us, okay, strap in, open up your leverage longs. It's ready to make some money for the next few weeks. So yeah, that's really my best view and opinion on, when altcoins will run is, those few metrics. So
yeah, love that. That was a great breakdown there. Saw some comments here from DNW says, loaded up in the bear market, break even so far below, he's in so much profits, he can't even see it. It's amazing. Zcat, in my opinion, the altcoin ETF will be the exit alarm.
It's a good possibility.
Yeah,
it is possible. It is a good possibility, at least within the period. Maybe we'll see strong moves a week or two after, but then after that, that's like pack it up type of vibe.
Uriel says XRP bag at 50 cents, 45 to 50 cents average, massive profit. Great job. Thanks.
Yeah, beautiful work there.
XRP to US oil pair, 12 times the charm.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look at that actually. So one other thing. So pair trading is awesome. Anyone who knows Bits of Wealth, he does it a lot as well. Cade, we talked about this forever. Bits of Wealth and myself, we like to pair things with a lot of different things. We look here. Here's a bunch of my unique pairings to give you guys a little sneak peek. I mean, I have Bitcoin paired with everything in the world. We got natural gas, we got corn, we got coffee, platinum, soybeans, Tesla. The list goes on. Awesome amount of stuff. So when Bitcoin, this is a very interesting thing actually. So people kept asking, why are you looking at this XRP oil chart? And I told them, hey, the reason why is because when you pair something with oil, it usually gives you an idea that the USD chart won't. And I really learned this deep last year when Bitcoin was in its consolidation phase. And Bitcoin USD looked like this. We could see this was a descending channel. A lot of ways to interpret this. Many people thought we were going down to 40K. Many people thought we were going higher. The US oil pairing really gave us a view that the USD chart did not. And anyone who knows charts knew that this chart was bullish. You look at this chart right here and, you have this perfect rounded bottom like this. You have a perfect resistance here. This is a bullish chart, right? So that gave us the idea, and this broke the high before Bitcoin USD did. So that really was the main reason we're like, okay, let's start pairing things with oil because oil is a big thing woven into the economy, and it's going to give us an idea that Bitcoin USD won't or XRP USD won't. So if we see here, I posted this exactly right here, is when we hit our low on Bitcoin USD, right here, when we hit the 74K, you can see my crosshair on the other chart right here. When we hit this, look at where Bitcoin US oil was. It was breaking out of a wedge. It was breaking out of one of my favorite patterns. I don't use patterns anymore, but falling wedge used to be my favorite pattern on earth. We can see right when Bitcoin was hitting this low, Bitcoin US oil was actually breaking out. And I posted this and I said, look at US oil, look at Bitcoin US oil. I said, this is telling us something. It told us something last year. It's probably telling us something now, right? So we can see what happened after that. Bitcoin here. Let me see if I can sync my drawings.
This is fascinating.
Yeah, it is really cool. I don't know. Let me sync my drawings here. So we see like right when Bitcoin, I'm not sure what's wrong with the sync drawings, but basically right when we broke out here, we could see this is when Bitcoin USD had its first pump. So what happened first? US oil broke out, and then right after Bitcoin USD did. So what it does is it shows us the road before the USD chart does. And then I posted this the day that it hit an all-time high. And I put I had Bitcoin laid over here. Bitcoin was still down here. I said Bitcoin's 8% off all-time high. Historically speaking, if Bitcoin US oil makes a new all-time high, it's only time until Bitcoin USD does. It's only just a lag. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Look at my crosshair on the other chart. See, right when we broke that high, look at where Bitcoin USD was. It was still right here. So we broke this, we retested, and then look, we have this expansion here, and then sure enough, Bitcoin USD follows and makes its all-time high. So that's a little rundown of how I also use Bitcoin US oil over the last 2 months to keep my bullish thesis, to say, hey, this is not bearish. And the last time this was not bearish and the USD chart was questionable, the US oil chart was right and the USD chart followed. So hopefully that makes sense for everybody. that's listening and watching, the Bitcoin US oil chart is really, it's like a chart from the future. It's literally told us the road ahead before we see it on the USD chart. And that really goes into where I'm watching here on XRP US oil. So I've been watching this for, I don't know, it's been months now. And we could see, anyone who knows ranges, I'm sure you too, Cade, like you look at this, isn't that a pretty crazy range we got there? Like,
Holy moly.
Incredibly respectful range. I mean, right here, same concept. Let me put XRP USD over here. See right here, when XRP USD broke out of the bottom of the range, see how it lost the range? See the pink line was a range low. We lost it. Everybody thought it was over. Everybody was calling for $1. I literally posted this chart and I said, the range is not over until XRP US oil said so. And sure enough, that was the exact low. And we've, moved up 60% off the lows on XRP USD. And right when we hit the top of the range, XRP has been cooling off. So very similar concept here. I'm waiting, before I start calling the alarm on XRP saying, hey, the altcoin market's probably going to start moving. I want to see this chart regain this level and push higher like that, because this is going to happen before the USD chart breaks its all-time high. And once that happens, just like we saw with Bitcoin US oil, it breaks its all-time high while Bitcoin's still down there. It's only time until XRP USD follows. So I know that's a bunch of words back and forth, but hopefully you guys get the gist there. It's a very, very, very powerful approach.
Dude, that's like a hack.
Yeah, it totally is a hack. It's funny, but it is a hack. Yes.
Is this like the lunar cycles type of hack, or is this like different?
No. This is a deep mechanic type of hack. Like this is looking at the relationship between two big assets. We're looking at large cryptos versus oil. Something that's woven into the financial system in a very, very deep manner. So no, this is no moon cycle. Full moon cycle, this and that. This is a very interesting way to gain an edge on the chart when no one else can see that edge, because people are like, hey, what's Bitcoin at? What do? They type in Bitcoin USD, right? Nobody types in Bitcoin US oil, but sure enough, that really is going to be the chart that really gives you the idea before the rest. I think it's tremendous. Very fantastic. Tremendous.
Yeah, CCAS says, I was watching XRP Gold, but here's another one I should take note of. Yeah. Shout out to Don for that one. That is something I'm definitely going to start paying attention to. And that's fun information to keep track of, even if it doesn't always play out.
No.
To post online and just get some conversation going,
It's exactly right. I got a lot of conversation going on this one, at least. I have a thread going with about probably 100 updates in that thread. And it's got like 200,000 views now, because I just keep updating the exact same thread, and the thread started like right here. So I update right there, update there, update there, and I just keep going. It's incredible.
Dom is the king of rage bait on X.
Oh,
polite rage bait.
Yeah, literally.
So funny. That's awesome. I see some questions in here too. Oh no, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, someone asked, how do you get it here? I'll post it in here. If you guys, I don't know if that comment will work. If you guys can see that comment.
Yes. But, I see.
Type that in exactly and press enter. It's not going to show up. You got to press enter.
Yep. If you're watching, it's on the screen. Crypto, XRP USD /TBC, US oil. Shout out to you for that.
Beautiful.
Let's see. So there's a comment here asking, Dom, why do you use more exotic time frames like the 3-day chart, the 7-hour, 45-minute, and 7-minute?
Oh man, that's a great question. And it just adds to exactly what we're talking about right now, because nobody else looks at those. And the number one way to get a edge in any market is to look at things that no one else does. If you're looking at the same data in the same way that the crowd is, you're going to see the same things. But when you look at data sets that other people don't look at, you're going to see things that other people don't see. So that's my best breakdown of why I do those type of odd things. You know, I've had so many people I see investing at attitude mindset. He said, I found Diamond X last year after that oil pair. I thought he was crazy. He's true. I can't tell you how many people have said, why are you pairing stuff with oil? And I'm like, because nobody else is. And sure enough, you know, that gives you an edge in the market. So that's really my best advice and best answer to that question is do things that the crowd isn't, and you'll see things that the crowd isn't. And that's how you gain an edge in the market. It's the best way to look at it.
That's good. That is good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that we did a pretty good breakdown here. Hopefully, good breakdown of how we got here, why I stayed bullish personally, the pieces of evidence for everyone that's watching to use yourself. Why I like to look at these exotic pairs, what I'm waiting for to see altcoin expansion, what I expect over the next week or two on Bitcoin, what I'll be watching. And yeah, I think that, it's a good breakdown, not too much. I mean, once altcoins start moving, we'll have a lot more to talk about. Once Bitcoin sees, hopefully sees a stronger expansion, we'll have a lot more to talk about. But other than that, I think that's all that I had on my mind. Kate, do you have any other things you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, we basically covered all the TA stuff. And definitely, you guys have any last questions? He said, oh, here's one from BCAN. Can you share more about how you're drawing the horizontal lines throughout the range on XRP US oil? Like, what are those other levels? I assume that's just one of your tools that you're.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah. So this is a GAN box. So this is actually something I made. So if we go over here to, where's it at? GAN box right here. So you can actually draw a GAN box, and I use these for ranges because they're cool. If we look, I'm not going to apply the default, but you probably will draw this and it will look way different. If you want, take a screenshot right here of all my styles, and then you'll get the same thing I am. And then all I do is just, mess it up like this. I mean, not mess it up, draw it like this. And what it's going to do is it's going to give you mid-range, top third of the range, bottom third of the range, top of the range, bottom of the range. And sure enough, look at how much price respects. See price respects, see how price rejects perfectly, see how price rejects perfectly, rejects. It really acts very perfect if you do a third, if you do a top range, third, top, or middle, third, and then bottom.
Yeah.
So it's just a clean way to draw a range.
Yeah, it's very nice. Very nice. It's crazy how those things just line up. Really is.
No, it is. I mean, this chart here is just, it truly is just I don't know. It's just it's an anomaly. It really is just like, out of all of my years in this market, I've never seen a range like this. I know this is XRP, but still, we're talking about a 170-day range where we get perfect bounces off every single level. It's just, it's incredible. So that's why, hey guys, everyone's waiting for me to say, hey, XRP is about to pump. That's going to happen when it's above this level. Until then, patience, chop. Yep.
Wow. Yeah. If you guys have any last questions, definitely throw them in there.
Yeah.
On top news, there's two stories that jumped out at me. One of them is, if I can find this actually. So if do you remember Gemini? I'm asking if he remembers. Gemini. They had there's a bunch of fun about them because people were lending money and borrowing money, I think, and then their platform kind of went, I think, a little bit in debt. A lot of people bought Bitcoin, held it there, and I think there was some kind of issue from a couple years ago.
Yeah, it was Gemini Earn.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's right. Let me pull this up. So let's see where it's at. Okay, well, let me know if you can see my screen. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So yeah, this is Gemini, and it's pretty interesting watching a lot of because I wasn't keeping track specifically of Bitcoin in the prior cycles. It was just kind of I was just chasing money. But a lot of the bigger crypto companies are starting to take a big Bitcoin lean. Gemini was big into, I mean, they're big into Bitcoin and crypto, but they're taking a pretty big Bitcoin lean here with Gemini Bitcoin card, and they partnered with MasterCard for this. And essentially they have a 4% back in Bitcoin, designed for Bitcoiners, but it's just because Bitcoin has really led the pack by far and kind of broken away from everybody else this cycle. But it's got the attention of big people like Michael Saylor commenting that he wants one of these. I saw James Safar from Bloomberg also was interested in getting one of these and got a lot of attention. And if you go on their site, basically you get 4% back on Bitcoin on like specific things like Ubers and transportation. And then it goes down to like 3, 2, 1% based on like other things you're buying, like groceries and stuff. But basically it gives you back 4% on Bitcoin. And people were stoked about that because that's amazing. And people are liking these types of products out here. But I just want to get some of your thoughts, Dom, on maybe this, if you have anything specific on Gemini, but also the direction and lean of a lot of these crypto companies. Jumping in more like the Bitcoin trade, you know?
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting thing because it opens up a whole other conversation about Bitcoin as payment and Bitcoin as what it was at first intended to be, which was a peer-to-peer cash, you know, something people were supposed to use to pay for stuff. And, you know, I think that the most important thing here is, number one, I think Gemini is a fine exchange. I never use them personally, but, you know, their owners are billionaires in cryptos. I think that it's probably a pretty safe exchange. You know, it's hard for me to even say that, but, you know, they do have a pretty good track record. Never seen a hack besides the earn thing, but I think that they did pay out their customers. I think my biggest question with that would be, and I'd have to look into it more, Kate, is how are they generating that yield?
I know that is always my question.
Yeah, like where are they getting that 4% from? You know, but if it's it's a credit card. So if it's a credit card, hey, the risk to the user is very slim. I mean,
that's what I was thinking. Yeah,
like I would absolutely be using that, because if it's a credit card, you're not putting actual money on there, you're just paying off the balance, then no problem. I would absolutely jump on that. I think that's an awesome thing. And, you know, I will say one thing is I think it's great for, you know, the expansion.
Oh, you may have cut out.
Sorry, Kate, was that coming through my speakers?
Yeah, it like cut out for a second. I didn't know if this was full screen on this video or not.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
No, I was basically just saying, you know, it really just brings up the question of, wasn't Bitcoin supposed to be used just as Bitcoin? You know, weren't we just supposed to send Bitcoin to each other, not use a credit card, not use existing rails? So I guess that's my only pushback to that is I think it's a great thing, but I think it kind of fails to the whole point of Bitcoin. Like, why are we now using a credit card for Bitcoin? Shouldn't we just be sending Bitcoin to each other, or scanning something in our wallet? You know, scanning something in our wallet and saying, hey, you know, here, let me pay. Because I know Costa Rica is big on, I think a lot of places in Costa Rica accept actual Bitcoin. But I think that this is a good bridge. You know, it's a good way to bring people on board. And I mean, 4% cash back, that's a pretty hefty amount. I mean, it
is, right?
Yeah, I mean, all my cards I don't think any of them pay back 4%.
That's good. And it goes directly to Bitcoin. So I'm curious on how that's gonna. I think I can just get it. It goes into my accounts, and then I'll probably just send it off immediately.
Yeah, no, it's a cool thing. I'll probably look into that because number one, it being a credit card is cool. All the debit cards I used to have for crypto, like the biggest one I used to use was BitPay. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of BitPay, but they were like the OG crypto credit debit card. You would basically send a crypto to your wallet, and then they would convert it into your balance, and then you would just go spend it. This being a credit card is actually very, very cool because you're not putting funds at risk. You're not putting one Bitcoin on the card, and you know, where's that being held, this and that. So I think it's a really cool thing.
Definitely. Yeah, there's also the other thing that this week was just like, it's the Genius Act, basically just a little bit of regulatory clarity and some guardrails put for stable coins. I thought it was interesting. And then this from today, the Texas moving to establish a Bitcoin reserve. A lot of people have been speculating on this last few weeks. So these things seem to happen at all-time highs every time, I feel like, I swear. But everyone's speculating right now. Like GameStop is now following Hal Finney, who a lot of people think might be Satoshi or definitely knew Satoshi. He was kind of there in the very, very early stages, day ones of Bitcoin. But GameStop is now following only Hal Finney, I think it is. Actually, let me see. I'm pretty sure. And I thought that was interesting because a lot of people are saying that there's going to be some kind of massive announcement that comes out. Oh, there are probably 22 people at the Bitcoin conference. Let me see. I thought, okay, so they are following how, but they are following other people. They're just following them.
Yeah, I mean, Hal Finney is totally part of the Satoshi group. If anyone's if anyone didn't know, he's actually frozen in Phoenix right now. He's frozen.
What?
He's frozen in a cryotherapy, or not. I don't know if it's called cryotherapy. He's actually frozen in a place in Phoenix, Arizona, Scottsdale, Arizona. And their hope is that they will eventually get to a point where they could revive his body.
Dude,
So
what?
yes, he is definitely. I mean, he knew who Satoshi was, or he was Satoshi. He was part of the group. I don't think Satoshi was one person. I think it was a group of three. But he was absolutely involved there. So, but yeah, I think GameStop already said that they were going to be, using money to purchase Bitcoin. And I think it's just like that snowball effect. We heard this 5 years ago, and then and then each year that goes by, it's like more people take that step in. More people fall over that cliff, and it just keeps on going. So I think it's an awesome thing. And people just say, oh, that's top, that's this, that's that. The more institutional bid we have behind Bitcoin, just like we saw this cycle, just like we saw since 75K, the more Bitcoin's going to go higher. So, I think anyone says, oh, it's bad, this company's buying this, that, it's going to be the top. If you have more buy pressure on Bitcoin, it is positive. That's how a market moves. If you have more support, if you have more bid behind it, if we had 5 sailors, we'd probably be at 200K.
Wow. Yeah. That's interesting. That is definitely interesting.
So yeah, I think it's an absolute great thing.
Love it. Also, I'm seeing here, here we go. This is on the Gemini thing. So I use this credit card. You can choose many other coins as rewards. Oh, okay, cool. So you can do other ones. I guess the big announcement is just there's going to be Orange and they're going to do Bitcoin. Store value. And then he also says they pay immediately with rewards as well. Once the transaction settles, you get coins right in your portfolio. Wow, that's cool. Okay.
Yeah, that's actually really incredible. I would only wonder. I wonder if there's a small limit on the cash back, like $1,000.
Yeah. Yeah, there might be. I don't know where it's coming from.
Because if not, I mean, you could rack that thing up and just earn free crypto nonstop. I think that's really cool, actually.
And that's kind of my goal here. I mean, I guess a lot of credit cards have those types of things. Okay, if you spend $5,000, but they give it to you in points, which are not actually redeemed for stuff. Yeah, but you take the points and then you can buy like flights with those. So I don't know where all these things. It's like they're all just everything's just everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, there is a max. There is a max per month. Depends on your credit limit as well. Okay, makes sense. I did get one though. I grabbed one, qualified for it. I think it's shipping to my house like this week or something. I don't think the orange ones are back in stock, but the original ones are. And then I think you can swap them out. Someone said, last question here. Can you clarify why you've drawn the GAN box from those wigs in particular? I think it's just the top. I think it was just like the top and the low, right?
Yeah. That was because that was drawn from December to February. So if you put like the replay tool on and draw it yourself, just do 2 boxes on the top of the range, the bottom of the range. That really is your range. And I have not moved those since then. So, I see how you say some wicks are below or front run. All I'm doing is just keeping the range that I built months ago and seeing how it continues to react. So, ranges are subjective, support and resistance are subjective. People think it's a line. That's why I don't really use lines to draw support and resistance. I use boxes because a support and resistance is not a level, it's an area. And I think everybody should understand that because, like, look, if I put on replay tool, I'm pretty sure I drew this. Oh, I can't use replay on a custom symbol, but say this is all we saw right here. That's why I drew the range the way I did. Because look, that's just how I draw my range, and then I haven't touched it since, and look how it's respected it. So hopefully that answers your question there. I guess last thing before we move on is, did you see the Hyperliquid whale, Cade, that was long $1 billion Bitcoin?
Dude, who is this? Is this the same guy?
That is the same guy. This is the most incredible thing I've seen in all of my crypto. Here, let me share my screen real quick, and then we'll wrap up.
Bro, this guy is crazy. He's got way too much money. If you guys don't know, this guy max leverages everything at the craziest places in the market, and he's the main character. He's the main character.
Absolutely incredible. I mean, look at his account value over the last week. It went from 50 million to 96 million in one day.
Wow.
And then look 24 hours. Look at the 24 hours. His account value was at 94 million at 5 a.m. and it dropped down to 66 million at 8 a.m.
Wow.
This guy's swinging like $30 million of P&L. Look at his P&L here. We can see he was up 4 million. Now he's down 24 million within 3 hours.
Bro,
I have never seen in my life. Look at his Bitcoin long right now. $820 million.
What?
I have never in my life seen a position this size in crypto.
Does he seem like he knows what he's doing, or does he seem like he's just got too much money and he's just throwing things on charts and clicking buttons?
Well, it seemed like he knew what he was doing over the last month, because he was long Bitcoin at 105 and we ran up to 110. So he knew what he was doing there, but I guess I haven't been tracking him enough to know if he knows what he's doing. I just think this guy's got too much money. If you're risking, $20 million and paying $4 million in funding alone, then you obviously this is probably a small part of your stack. This guy's probably a Saudi Arabia billionaire or something.
Someone said, how is this guy not enduring insane slippage on Hyperliquid?
Yeah, good question, actually. What he's doing is he's swapping in and out. So if we look at his completed trades, look, when he exited, when he exited Trump, he had 164 trades. When he was like today, when he was filling, look at all of his entries on, you see how this is open long? We keep scrolling through. These are all of his position size. So look at each size, 13, 260 on Sui, or if we go to Bitcoin, 130. So he's just doing tiny little chunks. He's not buying and selling all that at once. I was watching him yesterday, and yeah, he's basically just getting in and out one by one. So his position size right now is 7,500 Bitcoin. He probably did 300 orders to accumulate that. That guy wants his address. Yeah, here, I'll share his address here. If you guys want to watch him, I mean, it's pretty cool to watch. Go on hyper-up.info and you can watch him there.
It's wild.
I've just never who knows? This probably has happened before on Binance or Bybit, but we don't have visibility. With Hyperliquid, we could actually watch it on chain.
Yeah.
And to see his P&Ls fluctuate like this, I mean, this is just something I've never seen something like this before.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine seeing your P&L move 28 million in 3 hours. No. That is absolutely incredible. So because of this, though, I'm starting to analyze Hyperliquid data, because I realized, hey, I need to start capturing Hyperliquid trade data. I need to start analyzing their flows. I need to start seeing what these guys are doing, because there are some whales trading on this exchange.
That is nuts, dude. This guy's a psycho. And I do have to bounce. I just realized 11:57. We have to do a space here in a couple minutes with the Crypto Pulse. But dude, shout out to everyone who came through to the stream. It's been a little while. And by the way, Dom did post that here. So if you want to take a screenshot for later or whatever it is here in the YouTube comments, so we'll give you a second to do that. Yeah, this guy is crazy. But he's doing some stuff. So anyways, yeah, we appreciate you guys coming through. Please do subscribe to Dom's YouTube if you're watching from there. If you're on X, go give him a follow right above our faces. If you enjoy streams and spaces like this, definitely give us a follow here at Wolf. We're actually about to do a space here in a second for the Crypto Pulse. Do them on Fridays. So we join up with Moby Media and their crew, and potentially Emp if he's there from Wolf Financial, just talking all markets. So Dom, any final thoughts before we wrap?
Yeah, no, that's it. I think we covered a lot of really good info. If anyone missed it, there will be recordings. Hope everybody learned something as well, and thanks everybody for joining.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Guys, we'll catch you guys on the next one. If you're on X, jump over to Wolf Crypto and just refresh the page or something, because I just started the space and we'll be chatting about what's going on in the markets here. So we'll see you guys all in the next one. Take care. These were fun. Took a bit of a break from the streams, but then this week I did like 6, and I was like, you know what? I do miss the streams a little bit. So I'm glad we got to jump on for a bit, Dom.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, bro. We'll talk soon. And to everybody else, we'll see you on next.
Have a good weekend, guys.
Take care.